Hello Legitimates and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be doing another seemingly ugly bag, and this lovely cat fabric is what I will be using. We are going to do the Sandra saddle bag by Swoon Patterns. Right, I have got all of my parts in here. I've also got my hardware. I plan on using a strap end and the rivet magnets. So I'm just going to start with what's on top, which is the slip pocket. So with this, there's a little dart here that we need to do. So I'm going to flip it over. So I've got exterior and lining. I just happen to have some really cute little cat fabric. So I'm going to take a removable pen, or erasable pen, whichever way you want to look at it. I'm going to line that up like that, and then draw the two little tuck dart moments. Now I've got them because I have printed this off twice. I've got a full pattern piece, which, not gonna lie, does make things a lot easier. So if you ever have a pattern and it says cut on the fold, if you just cut two of them and then stick them together at the fold line, you get a full pattern piece. So I'm going to take the exterior as well, and again line it all up, transfer those markings, and you only need to do it a little bit because we're going to pinch them together. 1 and 2. So now I've got the little markings here and here. So we're just going to pinch them together. So I'm going to line up the lines and just do a little sew. Just a little bit, just to kind of hold it. Kind of makes like a dart. See that? So again, fold it, line it up. You can also sew up it if you'd prefer. And then we can grab this one and we can chain sew them, because I do love a good chain sew. Line them up. We're going to stitch and back stitch. Cut them off. And then the same with the other side. So I'm going to line it up. You can also add clips if that's helpful. Stitch and back stitch. Just a little bit. Oh, that's all stuck. That means there's something wrong with my bobbin. Yeah, okay. Don't know what just happened. It's got a loop somewhere, possibly inside the bobbin. I like to rewind it up just because I don't like to waste that much thread. It's always bobbins that run out, so rather than cutting it off, I like to wind it back on. Alright, we can trim off all those tails if they are annoying you. It'll be fine. And then we're going to put these right sides together. Line it up, stitch and back stitch, and then make sure that it's all lined up at the other end as well. And we're going to stitch and back stitch at the other end as well, and that locks all of our stitches in. I'm going to trim off the tails at the start, pop them in the bin, and then I'm just going to finger press this flat and then flip it over. And I'm going to top stitch. Now, you don't have to change your top stitch length, but I like it to be decorative, so I'm going to. I'm going to do a couple of stitches and back stitch just to make sure it doesn't come undone. And then stitch along that top edge, like so. Trim there, trim there. Oop, missed. And then we can just line up those little darts that we created, clip it together, and then I'm going to baste the whole thing together so that it's one piece. It'll make it easier to put on later. So I'm just going to go right around the edge and stitch the two together. You don't have to do this step, but it will make it easier when trying to build the bag later. And that is now your slip pocket done. So now we can grab our main piece. I have put foam on mine. I have made this bag once before, if you go back through my videos. I like the foam. The foam's a good idea. So we're just going to kind of pop that out. And it should all fit, theoretically. So I'm going to start in the middle at the bottom and add some clips. And then we are going to follow the curve around and up. And you should get this kind of bottom out look. This just makes it easier to actually fit things in your slip pocket. But you need to start from the bottom and then work your way up. Throw a bit of chaos. I also find the clips are easy to grab if I do it that way. So I'll show you what it looks like from the front in a minute. Let me just finish clipping these on. And you will have to go the whole way up. But you can see now it sits out. It's going to be like a full pocket. Now if you want to, you could also add another magnet here. If you're using normal magnets, you'll have to do that now. But since I use rivet magnets, I can actually decide a bit later. So now I'm just going to baste those all together as well. Like so. And that is now our slip pocket completed. So you can see it sits pretty smooth at the top, but you get like a nice shape so it will actually fit things. Because sometimes flat slip pockets are not as helpful as one might hope. So that's the back done. We're going to set that aside. I've done the slip pocket piece. Let's do the flap while I'm here. So again, it's got a magnet installation moment. If you are using a rivet magnet, you might want to put it in now just to make your life a bit easier. Sorry, not a rivet magnet, a normal magnet. Rivet magnets go in the end, normal magnets go in the other way. So if you've got like one of those really pretty decorative ones, you could put that in it now. We're just going to go around this curve. Now feel free to use clips. I have been sewing long enough now that sometimes I just don't need clips. Like so. Trim off your tails, and then I'm going to get my zigzag scissors because this is a curve. If you don't have zigzag scissors, just grab some normal little scissors and you can just make snips all the way along the edge. They're not a necessity, but they are a luxury item that I absolutely love. Love zigzag scissors. So we're going to cut off most of the seam allowance. Now you could add fleece or foam to the flap if you wanted to. You could also add a zipper pocket, which you should have done before this point. But I just wanted to have the flap. So I fussy cutted the cats. Not cutted, that's terrible English. Fussy cut the cats so that they look adorable on the front. I made sure that I didn't cut any off. I wanted to have like the proper cats right in the middle. So fussy cutting does take up a little bit more fabric than if you don't, but I do think that it's worth it, especially with a bag like this. Some bags don't need fussy cutting. This one did. So I fussy cut all the main panels. So now I'm just going to top stitch. I've gone back up to a 4 stitch length because that is my happy top stitching length. And we are just going to stitch around the edge. Now other add-ons you could do to this bag is you could put piping in this flap. That would look really cute. Fleece would make it a little bit padded if that's the look you're going for. Or a zipper pocket. Many options, none of which are wrong. They just don't come with the pattern. I could fill every bag with pockets. So see how cute the cats are now? So now we can take this and line it up along the top, and then this is where the magnet needs to go. So we can just stab through all the layers like that. I don't know if you can see that, but I have stabbed it through the paper and the thing, just so I can see where the flap needs to go. I will do that in a minute when I'm ready to do all the parts, which is obviously not yet. So what I want to grab in my tub here is the snap tab part. So I have cut out one of the pieces, and then I've just got a second piece of vinyl that's slightly larger. This is really good scrap busting, actually. So I can sew the two together. But to make sure it doesn't move, I am just going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on the back. I'm just going to do it kind of close to the edge. It's just so it doesn't shift while I'm trying to sew it. Depending on what size double-sided tape, you might just want one thicker strip down the center. It also depends on how slippery and stretchy your vinyl is. All these things are relevant. So I'm just going to whack it on there. Again, I've made it big enough that I don't have to concentrate too hard on that. And now I'm just going to stitch. I'm going to back stitch because I always back stitch. And then I'm using my top stitch length to sew around the edge. And when we get to the curve, you might want to slow down just to make sure you get a nice curve. I always like to do these in vinyl because I think they're pretty. But there is an option to do this in fabric. So if you had like a smaller print, you could put like the cat head right there. Although it would be potentially covered with a magnet, depending on if you're using rivet magnets or normal magnets. I no longer own normal magnets, so I will always choose the rivet magnet option. But if you were using normal magnets, putting a cat head on this would be really cute. Okay, so that bit's now rubbish. I didn't waste too much. That was also just like a sticking out part on the vinyl. So it looks fabulous. We've stitched nice and close to the edge. I know you can't really see, but I'm going to take this back and then line this up. And then again, I can just use my sewing awl to stab through all the layers. Now this will be harder because it's all vinyl, but we get the idea. So that's where the magnet's going to go. So now I need to grab, I want to grab, I don't need to. I'm going to grab the cam presses so that I can do all of this. All right, so I have installed one part of the magnet press into this one, and this one's still just a hole punch because even though we stabbed the sewing all through, it's probably not made a big enough hole. So I'm just going to use the actual hole punch to enlarge in the hole, and then we can put that one aside and grab this one. So this one has got the innie part here, which means it's the male part that we need because it all slots together, and the male part goes on this flap piece. So I'm going to just push it through. I like to click that on, and then when you set it in, it can't move, which is good. You're less likely to wreck your rivet magnet. And then for this one, I'm going to stab that through there, flip it over, add this to the back, and then we just slot out this one and put in the other one. Now you can't use it. I have tried to do it all without switching these over. You actually wreck this part, the female part of the magnet. So don't do that. I did try it to see if it would be more efficient. It is not. You wreck your magnet. It pushes out this inside part. And then make sure that they snap together, especially if you've used snap presses instead of magnets. Obviously my magnets work, but if you use the snap tab, which you are definitely inclined to do, if you were making this as a motorcycle bag out of all leather, I would be putting a heavy duty press stud. So when they're going like 100 kilometers an hour, it won't fly open. Did learn that the hard way. So I can put the flat piece aside now because that's that done, and this is done. Next up, just because it's on top, we're going to install a pocket. As always, I have cut a Tory pocket because they make me happy and because I can basically make them with my eyes closed now. And it's one piece. I like pockets that are one piece instead of three. It's just less pieces to deal with, and I find these ones easy. In saying that though, if you prefer the look where you do like the tab and then turn it all through, you are more than welcome to switch out the Tory pocket in any pattern with the style that you like. There's no rules. So in half, the half we drew on goes to the bottom like so. And I'm just kind of going to put it down a bit from the top. Now I'm going to eyeball this, and I can probably tell you it's about 2 inches. Oh no, it's 1.5. 1.5 inches down, because then 1/2 inch will be your seam allowance, and then you'll still have space. You can do however you like though. I love this ruler. Brymax made a special ruler just for me. Well, not just for me, you can buy them. I love this thing. It's 1 inch by 12 inches, but it's got countdowns each way. So I'm going to, since I've made a decision to do 1.5, we're going to put that there, and then just make sure that the pocket is straight. Biggest thing we don't want is a crooked pocket. And I can tell you that that is now straight. So I'm going to just keep my hand on it so it doesn't move, and grab some clips for the corner here and here. Move that, move the scissors, although I'll need them so they can't go too far. And then we're going to go back to a 2.5 stitch length, which is my happy joining length. Different people have different ones. I believe Sandra from the Garner Sewing Room likes 3 for her joining stitch length. I apparently like really small ones, what can I say? So we're going to back stitch at both the long edges, and then I'm going to do what's called a jump stitch and jump to the other long line, and then stitch, back stitch, and sew that one. If you ever need to practice your straight lines, a really fun thing that you can do is using a blunt needle, just get lined paper and sew the lines on lined paper. Might seem silly, but it really does help get your speed up for sewing straight lines. So just something you might want to practice once your needle's gone. All right, so I am now going to cut in between both of these. I'm going to fold it over. Now, to get a straight line, we line up this piece. So your main pocket, your main panel, if you line up the top edge, when you snip in the middle, you will get a straight line. If you don't line it up, sometimes you get a bit of a V and it gets close to the edge of your stitching, which is not what we want. So then I'm just going to triangle out the corners. That was a really small triangle. I usually like to do bigger than that. That's more like it. I like a pretty big triangle. You want to almost be able to touch it to the edge. They're just easier to sew in. The smaller the triangle, the trickier it is to get it sewn in well. So I'm just going to finger press this, and then finger press this, and then shove it all through. Now, because this is all fabric, I'm actually going to go and iron this flat because I want it to sit really nicely. It's now ironed lovely and flat. We're going to take some zipper tape. I'm going with green. It's a little bit off, but you won't see very much of it, and it'll be inside, so it'll be fine. We're just going to take the width of the zipper pocket, and I'm going to use my zipper scissors to cut it. And then we want to install your zipper pull. So I just crack it a little bit, and then I'm going to put one side in, hold it, so I pinch underneath with these 2 fingers and put my finger on top so it won't try and escape while I push the other side in. And then we just push down, I wrap it around my finger and pull. It took me a long time to learn that. I used to need the zipper jig. I got my husband to make me one and everything. But with practice, you don't need it. So now I'm just going to put this kind of roughly underneath, because every time I drag it to here, see, it moves because of the moving up across here every single time. So I don't worry too much about it. It's more about just getting it underneath in general. And then I'm going to fold back, you can't see, I'm going to fold back the main panel to line the edge of the zipper up with the edge of the pocket. Move the zipper pull out of the way. I'm just using a standard chunky for this because I didn't have a cute cat one. If I had a cute cat zipper pull, that would definitely be happening right now. And then I'm just going to top stitch around. Now I didn't back stitch because we're going to get back to that same spot. So I can back stitch all the layers closed together at the same time. And it just leaves less back stitching. The other option is you can pull it through the back and tie it off. I would be more inclined to do that if I was using a contrasting thread color. Down the end, needle down before you pivot so it doesn't shift while you're trying to sew it. And then when we get back to the start, I'm going to do 2 stitches and back stitch. It also happens to be on a black bit, so you really can't see those stitches at all. I'm not usually one to put black as a lining, but this just matched too cute. So now I'm going to fold back the main panel and then stitch the 2 sides and leave the bottom open because I'm going to turn the bag through here. Back stitch, because if you don't back stitch here, the pocket will come undone when you're trying to turn it through, and then it's annoying to have to fix it. So again, fold this back, make sure the bottom edge is lined up, stitch, back stitch. Other end, we want to back stitch there as well. It's really annoying if this comes undone in a bag. You have to hand stitch things. Nobody likes doing that. So we now have this. I'm going to move on now to my gusset lining piece. We'll do a gusset exterior in a minute. So the first thing we want to do, like always, literally always, is find the center. So fold it in half, and then I'm going to just grab some normal scissors and snip there and there. We've already found the bottom of here, so now I can just put these right sides together. So I'm going to start middle bottom, and just for something different, I'm going to have the clips face away from the gusset, just because I want to see how that goes. I haven't done it in a while. So I'm going to just put 3 clips at the bottom, and then I'm going to come up to this top edge, line that up. Whoops. It's a weird habit to get out of, putting clips on the other way. And then I'm just going to work down towards the curve. We always work towards the curve. And then if I hold it in like that, it all just fits. That's how pattern, this is like the hardest bit of pattern writing, is to make sure that everything fits together nicely. It's all just maths, or at least that's how my brain sees it. Beautiful, beautiful maths. Okay, so we're just gonna keep clipping around. I could probably make this without clipping the lining, but that just comes with practice. Lots and lots of practice. All right, so it's now all clipped together. We're still on our 2.5 stitch length. So with this side up today, we are going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance because that's what the pattern has. The other perk of doing it this way is I can move the pocket out of the way without accidentally stitching it. Other ways to avoid such thing is making a smaller pocket so it won't be in the way. But where's the fun in that? Round we go. And it might look a little bubbly on the edge, but it's meant to because it's a curve. Okay, so where it actually fits perfectly is at the seam allowance, and see all those little bubbly bits? That's because it's a curve outside of the seam allowance. Just how that works. Otherwise you'd have to cut like weird triangles as you sewed. Like to pre-cut this, instead of having the bubbles, you would cut out little triangles on curves to make it then sit perfect. Nobody wants to do that. So, with the pocket up here out of the way, I am going to cut off a bunch of the seam allowance. Now, you might be wondering, why not just make less of a seam allowance instead of cutting it off after? And the easiest and simplest solution, or answer, is because this is like, oh, what's the word? It's like a leniency. So if you do happen to stuff it up, you've got all this room before you fall off and do some damage. So even though the seam allowance is 1/2 inch, you can get away with like flirting with that line a little bit. Love zigzag scissors. So now, and you should always check before, not after like I am, but your curve should now be fabulous. There should be no pinches or anything. Now let's put on the other side. So again, we need to find center bottom. So you line up the straight edge, work around the curve to the middle, make a snip. Whoop. It's all about to fall off. And so then again, we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to line it up. And this time, I'm just going to put a few clips on and do it without clipping. For those that are more advanced watching from home, you should try this. It's quite empowering to know that you don't need as many clips. I'm just putting them at the start because it's important. And then, because I know it fits because we did the other side, we're just going to stitch and back stitch and then line it up. And then you just grab this corner and use your fingers like clips to push it into place. And around the curve we go. End of the curve there, make sure your needle's down. And then again, I'm just going to line it up like so, and around we go. It's quite a fun little exercise to see if you can manage that. Obviously nobody loves unpicking, but you should try it. It's really fun. And then I'm going to trim off all the tails I can find. And then if you want to, we can turn it through and check for pinches. Which I got none. But it's always good to check because you never know. Turn it back out now, and then again with the zigzag scissors, I'm going to cut that off. It will help the lining to sit flatter in the bag when we make it. So we'll be doing the same to the exterior, but I probably won't be using the zigzag scissors. For those that are new here, I do know that they're called pinking shears. I just really enjoy calling them zigzag scissors because there's not many opportunities in life where you get to say zigzag. This side's always a bit harder just because I want to make sure I don't cut the rest of the bag. I have done it once, and so now the paranoia is real. So with this, we can turn it out the right way, and you can also open your zipper pocket now and put it aside. Next, we need to add our strap connectors. Move that over there. Again, I cut double because I hate cutting on the fold. It's a personal preference. I just don't like it. Oh, and I just dropped the bag on the floor. So these are my strap connectors. If you're using fabric, don't do them this way. But because everything's vinyl, I'm going to make hidden strap connectors. Another really fun thing to do on this bag to make this even more amazing, and I probably should have done it, but it's probably too late now, is along the gusset, using either a green or a glow-in-the-dark thread. You could put like little cat paws or cat faces or something cute and little if you've got an embroidery machine. You could also iron on with HTV if you've got a Cricut. Do the same thing. But like dainty little outlines would be my best suggestion. Not like a chunky cat face. You want something delicate. basically because it makes it a bit more subtle. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to fold this over and join it in the middle. We don't have a name for this yet, but it is, with practice, it is much faster to do both sides at once than do one side and then come back and do the other. So we're just folding it into the middle, or what I'm eyeballing as the middle. If you're worried, you can draw a line, each to their own. And then we're going to grab our 2 rectangle rings. So I've got some quite chunky ones here. This is what they're going to look like. Now, if you want to, you could just stitch them on the outside of the bag like that. That's basic option 1. Option 2 is offset them like this and fold both sides kind of in the middle and then stitch it on that way and you have no raw edges. But what I'm going to do is actually cut a hole and have them hidden so that they're inside the bag. World's your oyster. Again, I'm not the boss of you. You can do it however you want. But this is just how I want to do it. So I'm going to go, personally, I'm going to go 1.5 inches down because 1/2 inch is seam allowance and you don't want to, you still want to be able to top stitch and this will hang up anyway. So I'm going to do it 1.5 inches down and in the middle, which is right here. And sometimes the texter doesn't want to play ball. So you probably can't see it, but I have drawn a line. It's quite faint because it's on black. And then we just need, where's my beautiful green cutting knife? So what I like to do is I'm going to put the blade up and I'm going to start at the bottom because the line's going up like this. I'm going to stab in and then move the blade along like so. And then we'll repeat with the other side. And I'm going to close this so I don't stab myself. Been there, done that. So again, in the middle, draw your line. So you want to make it the full 1 inch. And then blade up, start in the bottom, poke it in, cut upwards to the other edge. Now we technically don't need those yet, that was more for the demonstration. So we're going to take this and shove it into the hole. You want to have the join side facing up. I love hidden strap connectors. I don't even know why, I just do. So you want to make sure that there's enough so when we top stitch and push this through, there'll be enough to stitch it down basically. So with this facing up like this, on this tab piece above here, we're going to stitch it to the bag. I'm going to move that before I knock it down. And that. I'm going to go up to 3.5, not quite 4, but not 2.5, and we're going to stitch. So stitch, back stitch, and you only want to stitch on the piece. I like to stitch all the way forward and all the way back. Then, now that we've got that, see the stitching? We're going to feed this on and then push this through the hole. Now it gets a bit fiddly because it is only as big as we need. You don't want to make a bigger hole. Defeats the purpose. And sometimes it likes to be really stubborn. Okay, so we grab it and I'm going to yank it down until it is really tight around my rectangle ring. I want it nice and tight in there. Now this is where some domestics might struggle because we're going to sew through both of these and the top layer with all the foam and everything else. So I'm just going to come as close as I can. We're going to stitch, back stitch, all the way across, back stitch. You can also add a rivet if that's your thing, but you do want to do the stitching as well. So you might want to do stitching and a rivet. But that is now very secure. It's not going anywhere. And then we repeat to the other side. Push it in. Make sure that there's enough that we'll stitch it. That's probably a little bit too much. And then on the top part, we're going to stitch all the way along and then all the way back stitch. That's just 2 layers of stitching that makes it more secure. Even though this thread is quite strong. They make horse rugs out of this, the M40 or the Tex70. And I don't know if anybody's got horses or knows much about them, but they are quite rough with their rugs. Okay, so then we're going to again stitch and back. You can also pull those tails through to the back and tie them off if that's your thing. But I have now got hidden strap connectors that look adorable. Let's fold this in half and find the center. I'm going to use scissors and not my snips. We don't want to make them blunt, that would suck. And snip. So I'm going to take the front piece. We haven't got many pieces left. I'm going to do the strap at the end because I didn't sew it at the start. Move that over there. The only thing left here is the strap. It'll be fine. So first up, we are going to take the front piece, find the center, and then put this on the front piece. Always with the center of everything. We also don't need the flap just yet. So, cats, flap, we want to put that in the center like so. That's where it needs to sit, because then the flap comes down and it attaches to it like so. Flip it over, right sides together. Now I wouldn't recommend skipping clips on the exterior. It's always chunkier and therefore trickier. I'm just going to do a few clips there, and then I'll come up to this end, line up the top edge, because we want a nice top edge. I'm quite enjoying doing my clips in the reverse order. Don't know why, I just felt like it today. Some ways work better for some people, and doing it the other way sometimes works better for others. There's no rule. So again, a little bit bubbly, curve going on a straight bit, totally normal, do not freak out. Okay, so that's half. Then we're going to come to the other side. This is a very cute bag. I'm not even like a huge cat person, but this is cute. But again, see, this was sent to me as part of the ugly fabric, and I don't really necessarily think it's ugly. Do I think it's everyone's taste? No, but skulls aren't everyone's taste either. And I'm pretty sure there's more people that love cats than love skulls. Alright, so there's a lot of clips. I don't judge anybody by the amount of clips they use. Everything is fine. So by doing it this way, you do kind of have to hold it up as the 3D object it is, but that's okay. So we're going to start at the top, stitch, back stitch. Make sure you don't sew your finger. That would suck. And then I'm just going to hold it. Try and sew smoothly around. If you don't go too fast, and this is also why you put the clips up the right way, you can kind of do it in one smooth motion. Do you have to sew that fast? Absolutely not. But you never know, you might enjoy it. So now the big question is, do I have any pinches? And you can see that I do not. We have this, that's fine. You could have also put piping in that. Now, just to secure this a bit more, because again, you never know if you sell bags or give them away, you never know how rough someone's going to be. So I'm just going to do that cool little zigzag thing I do. Back stitching at both ends, of course. And that has now given us, instead of just one layer of stitching, we now have essentially 4 because the zigzag goes 1, 2, and 3. So you can just do whatever makes you comfortable. That made me comfortable. So now we're going to grab the back pocket, which is nice, and we do this one last because of this. It makes it easier. And we want to fold it with wrong sides together, again, because of the pocket. And so we just want to go around and find center bottom, because I did not do that earlier. I just eyeballed it. Turns out sometimes eyeballing it just works. It's a practice thing. If you've only ever made one bag in your life, probably don't help but eyeball it. But if you're up to like bag 20 or 50 or wherever you're at, you might be okay. Might be the next step in life. Just to eyeball it a little bit, and not everything. I can understand it can be daunting. I'm going to put 5 clips at the bottom, and then we're going to come up to the side and clip down towards the curve. So you always want to try and do the curviest part last if possible. I know it's not always possible, but sometimes it really is. So because this one is going to be thicker as well, so you're bubbling, or you're scrunching upness at the seam is going to feel more forced because of the slip pocket and all the interfacing we did. So on every green cat fabric piece, I have put Hefty, which is Vilene 1050F, which I believe is similar to Decaville Light, if I have got that correct. So that's on every green piece of fabric on this bag, whereas the lining just has a non-woven medium to light interfacing. Lining never needs as much. See? Clipped all the way around. Looks fabulous. I should have clipped them the other way. It would have been way easier so, but we're doing it now. So that's the downside to clipping them this way, is you have to hold it more like a 3D object. However, if you have a cylinder arm, sewing them that way, fantastic. I no longer have a cylinder arm, but if you're in my Facebook group, you can see what I replaced it with. And the reason I got that is because right after I sold the cylinder arm, my husband messaged me telling me he wants an all leather gym bag, which is on my list of things to make. And this machine could not do an all leather gym bag with the leather that he has picked. It is way too thick. So I have a new machine, which I was going to wait until I got it painted to do videos on. But we haven't got a hold of the airbrushing person. And I just don't really want to wait. I'm impatient like that. I want to play with it now. All right. So again, if you want to, you can check that seam. You can usually see it though. You'll see a little pinch. If you pinched it during the sewing, you can usually see it. Double check. Feel confident in your decision. I'm good. So let's cut off this seam. I am going to leave it at the bottom where we did that extra stitching, because that is now like a bit of a stress point. And then the rest of it, I'm just going to cut off about 50%. I'm not measuring it. I'm eyeballing it. Again, it's fine. And we just want to cut off some of this, again, so the lining will sit nicely. And cut it all off. It will also help with bulk and top stitching and things. Now this one, this is the back slip pocket. Now that it's attached, we don't need all of our basting stitches, so you can cut them all off. This part can hurt your hands. Mine are starting to get to the tied part now. If you need to do it in sections, that's fine too. Maybe sew one side, then trim it, then sew, then trim, and it's not so much of the hacking motion all at once. Let's go about flap. Now, it goes to the back and right side's touching. So the cats are going to touch the cats at the back, and I'm just going to kind of put the flap in between everything like so. And then if you pull it tight, it should fit nice and snug between the two side seams. So I'm just going to clip just the back or like so. And then my lining, which I dropped, because of course I did. Here's the lining. Now I like my zipper pockets on the back of the bag. So where we just put our flap, I am now going to shove all this in and make the zipper touch the flap. And the first thing I'm going to do is line up the short edge. This is just my personal preference, but because it's short, it's easier to line up, and that's just where I like to start. World your oyster, you don't have to do that. And then we're going to line up the other edge. I also should be nearly out of bobbin thread soon, and then I can do my strap. I always like to start with a full bobbin for the strap so that we don't have fancy or like joins in the stitching. It's like smooth and continuous. Personal preference again. Okay, so I've done those three. Now I'm just going to flip it. I always like to have it kind of closest to me. And I'm just going to add the lining into these clips. And it should all just sit where it's meant to. You should have very little issue. If you're finding that one is too big or too small, you can just come back. So let's say that this was too big and my lining was super tight. You can just come in and do a little bit of an extra seam allowance, like 1 or 2 thicknesses, like stitch thicknesses in, and it will then even it all out. Same with the lining. If the lining is too baggy, you can just go and sew a little bit extra of a seam allowance, mainly just at those points where it joins up, and it should all balance out. So I'm gonna peel this back like so, slot it under the machine, and again, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to stitch. Now you can back stitch if you want to here, but we're going the whole way around, so you absolutely do not have to. And I'm going to go slowly. Make sure the needle's down every time I adjust the bag. Now the bag's quite bulky because of all the foam. You also, I'm at the side here, I am pushing the strap connector down so I don't accidentally hit it with my needle. That would suck. Needle down, adjust the bag. So this is slow going just for the adjusting. If you have a cylinder arm, you would sew this the opposite way. So you would sew it like around the bag like so. So your needle would be this side, not on the inside. I'm just bending down, so that was me just flicking the strap connector down so it's not near my needle. I don't want to accidentally hit it. That would suck. Take out the last clip, make sure nothing's pinching. Get back to the start and backstitch those stitches as well. Scissors. Now, if you're on a domestic machine, you absolutely have to do this. But basically in each corner, I am going to cut a bit of a divot out to get rid of the bulk. This will help with the next top stitching that we're going to do, like a lot. So you just want to cut out the corners because it's already thick enough and you don't want to make it worse. Like so. Now I'm going to stop right here and check my bobbin because I have to top stitch. I've still got enough. I've got enough to top stitch, and then I'll probably just switch it over to do the strap. This is also why I usually like to do the strap first. So pull out the lining, put your hand into the zipper pocket. Now we opened it earlier, so that shouldn't be an issue. And the first thing I'm going to do is grab the flap. There's the flap right there. Then I'm going to put my hand back in. Usually I grab a corner, there is no corner, so just kind of push it in, grab anywhere you like, and we're going to slowly start turning the bag onto itself so that it comes out of the hole. Now that looks tragic, but I'm going to keep squishing it, and then I'm going to take the pocket lining and encase the whole bag with it. Because if you can get it to this point, it falls through at the end. Right, so you can see here, I'm literally just stuffing it into the pocket. And then if I grab the pocket and gently pull, the bag will just fall through the hole. That was pretty gentle. You don't want to be too rough. You also don't want to be too gentle because then you'll never get anywhere. You gotta find a balance, really. Oh, I'm loving the look of this bag. So much. I was like, oh no, there's a pinch. But there's meant to be. It's the back pocket. We're fine. We're fine. Okay. So, this is the same way I always do it. I put my fingers in up to the first knuckle, pinch underneath, then use my pointer fingers to tuck that inside. I don't know how I come up with that, but it works. And then we're just going to try and stitch as close to the edge as you can. Back stitch. It just occurred to me I haven't put my tag on this bag. Bugger. And then we're just going to put the pocket in, zip her up, and then I just like to kind of shove my hands in to push everything where I want it to sit. Now you can see the seam allowance is making this sit up. This is why we have to top stitch, because no matter how much you cut down, it'll still do it to some degree. So this is where we're going with the bag, by the way, just if you need to see it in action. That's what the flap will look like. Adorable. And then I fussy cut the ones underneath too. And a happy accident, I swear I didn't do that, but the tail matches up. That is a fluke. Apparently I fluke these things a lot. The tail matches up and then it's the same underneath. Did not. That's a happy accident. Happens to me a lot more than I think it does, but not intentional. Now, the easiest way to do this is we can just slot the bag under and start stitching. But you can also, if you don't like the way the bobbin stitching looks as much as the top stitching, you can turn the bag inside out and do it the reverse way. Choice is yours. I'm going to do it this way because it's easier. I'm also going to move them, otherwise the flap is going to knock them. And we're just going to stitch. Now I'm going to stitch at 1/8 of an inch because I have experience doing this. If you're new to bag making and you've just popped in to say hi, I suggest doing 1/4 of an inch seam allowance for top stitching if you're beginning. It's just less likely for you to fall off the edge of the bag and wreck your beautiful top stitching. I'm also just kind of flattening it down as I go around. And you can see I'm not having any issues at those side seams because we cut all the bulk out. So it's not trying to go up a giant ramp. I call it a ramp or a hill. Needle down, adjust the bag. Now you can go along and clip all of this if that's more of your thing. Sometimes I just like to do things without clips. Sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes they are more hindrance than help. Needle down, adjust the last bit, make sure that the flap is also the right way so you don't stitch that wrong. 1/8 of an inch. We're going to get back to the start. I'm going to do 2 stitches, back stitch. Done. Trim your tails. If you need to, you can also burn them off, whether that's with a lighter or whatever you're using. The bag is adorable. Now, it still needs what I call the Tory squish along this edge, just to make it sit out a bit more, but adding the foam is definitely better than having nothing on that vinyl. You could also have added piping in here. Piping would help hold that seam out so you wouldn't have to do so much squishy work. Because see how it looks odd? It doesn't look even, and that's just because this seam needs some violent manhandling. So all I'm doing here is I'm putting my finger up underneath to push that seam right to the edge, pinching it, and then doing this back and forth to create a crease in the vinyl to make it sit better. That's pretty much what we're doing. And if you can't do this to your bag, I would not trust it with my phone and wallet. You can be as rough as you like. Sometimes it's like good meditation moments. Let your anger out. But see how that already sits better? Flap. Boom. Right, let's set that aside and do the strap. Now I wanted to have some cat on the strap because I just think it'll look pretty. So I have got width of vinyl, which I think is about 135 centimeters. Whatever it is, that's just what I make my crossbody straps, because then I don't have to do a join. With fabric, if I make an all fabric strap, depending on the width of the fabric, it might have a join. So if the fabric's only 45 inches or 112 centimeters wide, I will make it 150. But with vinyl, that width is fine. So I've put, this is 3/4 inch double-sided tape. I do sell it on my website. Sandra has it in America. It is my favorite double-sided tape, hands down. Not just the style, because it doesn't gum up my needle, but also because I'm just not confident I'd get a strap out of that, and I don't want to have a join like 20 centimeters from the end. So here's one I prepared earlier. And then this means I don't have to worry. Means I don't want to have to worry. So I am going to peel off just a small section, and then I like to put my finger in the middle, use my middle finger and my thumb to kind of bend them together, squish it together, and then push down. I don't know how better to describe it, but this is how I do the double-sided straps. And then as you go along here, I hold my thumb quite flat and use all my other fingers to just kind of bring it to the center. And then once I've done a section, if you've got stubborn vinyl that doesn't like being bent, I have this little roller, so I just roll along the seam. This will also help if you're on a domestic. This will flatten that to make it easier to sew. So do recommend, I got this one from Temu, but you can get them from everywhere. It's just a little roller, works great. Pull it all off, squish it down like so. And then move along, squish it down. Now this doesn't have to be perfectly in the center, funnily enough, because we're going to put fabric over the top of this join, but you want to get it pretty spot on. And this takes practice. You can go back and see my old videos where I started doing this and it took me ages, and now look how quick we are. Well, I am. I'm apparently talking to myself as a plural. Me and my multiple personalities. That would be tired sewing Tori and excited sewing Tori. I do really love how this looks. So today I'm clearly excited sewing Tori. So again, I can see it. I don't think you'll be able to see it on the camera, but that is definitely getting flatter, and it's also going to stop it lifting. Squish. You get quite good at it with practice. And I'm just doing this now because I started it and I don't want to have it half rolled. That's silly. This vinyl doesn't really need to be rolled. It would have stayed where I told it to. But it's also like, if you're going to prep this the night before, instead of having to add 100 clips to it, maybe rolling it could be a great solution for you. So I'm just going to cut off part of the selvage edge, and then I'm going to tuck that underneath so that we have no raw edges on the end. Now I only have to do this at one end because I'm putting on a strap end. I'm going to go up to a 4-stitch length. I'm going to do one rotation to pull my bobbin through so it doesn't get all bird's nesty. Nobody wants a bird's nest. And then, now again, if you want to, you can lay another piece of double-sided tape down the center and stick this to it. I'm not going to because I don't need to. Now this end here is going to be the end that goes into the strap adjuster because it's got the fold. But now I'm just going to use my fingers like clips I'm also going to make sure that all the strap sits basically between my legs, flopping onto the floor, so that it's not trying to twist as I'm sewing it. And I can hear the bobbins giving me grief. Can you hear that? Because I can. It wasn't actually doing anything naughty, but it has a giant loop. The more you sew, the more in tune with your machine you will become. And I'm pretty sure with how often it happens to me, a lot of you can hear it as well. It's a fun skill to have. So I'm going to unpick that because the whole point was to not have a join. I don't want a join. It's also not as tight as it should be. That come out way too easy. So I can leave it on the very end. I don't care about the end so much. I do, however, care about this part, or at least some of it. I'm going to have a crisscross look at the end here. So some of it's not a big deal if it stays. Of course I dropped something. Good job, me. I swear it's not a Tory video unless I drop something. Again with the magic tricks. That one I just missed. Alright. Then I'm going to go back. Instead of back stitching, I'm just going to go back through them. That is very upholstery sewing of me. Upholsterers do that. Instead of back stitching, they just lift it up and go back through the first 2 stitches. So I'm eyeballing it. Also, as you can see, I cut this out a while ago, and sometimes fabric just doesn't want to stay fabric. It would prefer to be threads blowing in the wind. So we just chop them off as we go. There's no point in doing it in case it's a super fraying fabric. So if I did it all the way to the end, it might... Really? Again? It did it again. See, I am doomed not to have a nice stitching. Fine. We'll go back to the other bobbin. If it's going to be a jerk, at least I know this one likes me. That can happen for a lot of reasons. One of which, sometimes my bobbins don't like stopping and starting over and over. So there's a good chance it was that. I just didn't want to have this bulky stitching part. But it can't all be cool, apparently. Line it up in the center, hold it down with your hands like clips. Sometimes with this, clips are actually more of a hindrance than a help. Sometimes it doesn't hold it where you want, or the clip gets in the way, and then when you pull it off it moves. So I actually find for straps, I prefer not to use clips. That's not to say that you don't have to, but I'm just making an observation. I used to do clips, and quite often you'd get like pinches and stuff. Not as cool as you'd think. I keep running my finger down the side to make sure all of the flyaways are tucked in when I'm sewing. I prefer not to have to pull them and cut them off. Sometimes though it just can't be helped. Now the fabric is usually slightly longer than the vinyl. Happens all the time. If you want to, I'm not going to, but if you wanted to, you could cut it off a little bit longer and tuck this end in as well. I'm just not going to because I want to put a strap end on, and the bulkier you make it, the more painful they are to do. It's their little magic trick. So you won't see that end stitching. And then I'm going to take this, first thing I'm going to do is deal with these now so that they don't get in the way of the other sided stitching, because then you're going to have to like fiddle and pull them out. Nobody wants to do that. Into the bin. Again, down, in line with the machine. This side always goes faster, but try and, instead of doing fast and slow, because you'll have my bobbin issues, try and just sew it kind of more consistently. It obviously can't always work because I'm tucking in flyaways as I go, but what I've got going on here is this hand is flattening it down and this hand is kind of poking that other side in. So as it moves, I just did that while moving it. But as it moves, it tucks in all the flyaways and all the fabric and everything. It makes for a smoother sewing. Again, you don't have to do this. This is just what I do. Sometimes, again, the flyaways are too much. But with the right hand movement, that can go quite smoothly. And then chop off the tails. And then I like to check the back because sometimes my stitching is dodgy. But we seem to be alright. But always check your back. Just in case your stitches didn't work some places. It has happened to me. Alright, last little bit. I'm going to take my strap adjuster and the end where we folded the fabric, and we're going to wrap it around the middle bar. I always like to do it this way, but you can do it however you want. So now I'm just going to have enough so I can do across, diagonally down, across, and diagonally up. I always like to start at the end where the metal is so that it won't be in my way while I'm trying to sew. Now, if you don't want to do this, you can, of course, just put rivets in. Very real option. Spin. Up we go. Backstitch. And that is nice and secure. That should not be able to come off. While I'm here, I'm going to grab my thread zapper and just, I use it like a paintbrush and just paint down the flyaways into the rest of everything. And I love this one because it's USB rechargeable, so I don't have to keep finding batteries. Although I did see the other day that you can now get USB rechargeable, like A4 battery, or AA battery, sorry, not A4, that's paper. Nice and smooth. Grab your bag, make it face you. Have this side facing out, the bit we just stitched. I'm going to go down through the bag. And then up, and then down. And we want quite a lot of it, right? And then you want to make sure that there's no twists. And then we're going to come over, and then the other side, we're going to go out and in, like so. And then that's the way the strap will go. So on this end, I'm going to take my strap end, and this side will be facing out. So I'm just going to put the strap end on like that, flip it over. I've got my other one of these because I was using the other one. So this is my backup one. And it's technically the one my child stole. He loves screwdrivers, like electric ones especially. Ah! This one, as you can tell, is not magnetized, which is kind of wrecking my whole moment. So we're going to have to do it the old school way. Now I can magnetize them, which I will be doing, but just not right this second. So in it goes. Make sure it's all lined up where you want it, because once you put the screws in, it can't really move anymore. And screw it in. It's just pretty. This side I'm going to do some rivets, I think, because this is the side you see. Nobody looks at the little join, so you don't have to have rivets down there. Save your hardware. This side, however, different story. All right, so hole punch. My husband tortured me with a workout today, so that was quite an effort. I just want enough to be able to put one rivet in, but you can do two. You can do all the way up to 3, depending on how decorative you want it to be. Punch a hole in the middle. Then I'm going to take these out. I've always got this one near me. Up we go. And then I just need to grab my box of hardware. So all fiddly bits of hardware I keep in their own box. So I still have a wall of hardware for all the bigger stuff, but things like rivets and bag feet live in here. Press studs, all that kind of jazz. I just find it easier to grab when I'm doing a video. But all other stuff I have and pre-organize my life kind of a little bit. All right, so I'm just going to install that. And then underneath here, I'll turn it around so you can kind of see. We want to line it up and squish it down. And that's it. Your bag is complete. So that's gone from ugly fabric to this adorable bag, which I can see selling very quickly, so long as someone loves cats and or green. You could even look past the green because they're in the grass. I love it. And a happy accident that this just happens to line up. I don't know how I managed that because it was not intended at all. But still, super cute. And this back pocket does still sit quite flat at the top, even though it's kind of bulky at the bottom. So I will do one more Tory squish and an iron, and this will go up for sale. But I hope that I maybe taught you a new technique today, or maybe convince you to try and do something without clipping everything. Anyway, I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.